Uh, my name is David Starkman, uh, and this is a beginner's guide to Stereo Photomaker. Uh, I've been using Stereo Photomaker almost since it first came out. And uh, again, I'll emphasize this is for beginners. I notice a lot of familiar faces here, but I can't see the people who are watching with headsets. So I hope you got a lot of beginners there. So, I'm not going to be getting into more advanced topics. Our 3D Club will be doing some of those later on, and maybe Steve can tell you about those when I'm finished. So what is Stereo Photomaker? Well, if you've been shooting a digital 3D at all, this is a program to let you align and manipulate your right and left images for the most optimum 3D viewing, as well as for cropping and doing other things. So as beginners, a lot of you might be using one of the two Fuji 3D cameras. I personally, that's my recommendation for the best way to start these days, because it's just so easy. It's as easy as using a regular digital camera. It has two lenses about the same distance apart as your eyes, a little bit farther, as you can see. And it even has a 3D display on the back. For those that are right at the beginning, don't want to invest in something like that, you can just use a single camera or your phone and I usually start with the left, but you can take a left eye picture and move over a little bit, take a right picture. And that's even more important because Stereo Photomaker, if you tilt it a little bit between the two pictures, there's a slight exposure difference. Stereo Photomaker, in many cases, maybe most, will automatically correct those things. And I'll get into that later. And the other options for many people are putting twin camera rigs together. So that's some of the options for how to take your 3D pictures. And see, while we're starting here, let me go into the chat and I'm gonna paste. I just pasted a little intro that has a bunch of links and things. So I just want to emphasize, this is being recorded. I forgot to hit record on this computer myself. All right, this is being recorded, so it'll be made available later. But also, everything I talk about, there are written tutorials available online, and I will tell you where to find those later. I've written a couple, and there's one really good one somebody else did that I like even better, which I'll tell you about. So without any further ado on that, and we'll take questions, but if you could, unless you think I've really I'll ask the other hosts, if you think I've missed something, because it's hard to remember everything, please leave questions for the end, and then I'll be happy to answer as well as I can. And hopefully we can do this in about 45 minutes. So here we go. So to me, the first step is before you even get into the program, it's what I'll call housekeeping. And let me share my screen. And let's see here. Are you guys? Oh, let's see, seeing my desktop. Okay, so you've got my desktop. I'm going to go into my workshop folder. And if you look here, this has more than you would normally need, but the first thing I do is create a folder. Let's say it was, yesterday at the beach was the title of the day I spent taking photos. So I'd create a folder called Yesterday at the Beach, and then within it, I would put at least 3 or 4 folders, depending whether you're doing it with a Fuji or a 3D camera like the Fuji, or if you're doing what we call cha-cha, where you take 2 pictures, one right after the other, or with a twin camera rig. If it's a If it's a twin rig, I will have, as you can see here, a left and a right folder where I will later upload the right and left images. If it's from the Fuji or Lumix 3D1 camera, I will have a folder that's called MPOs or something like that, because the 3D pictures that it takes, instead of a JPEG or extension that you might be familiar with, they have an extension that's .mpo, which stands for a multi-picture object. And basically, it's kind of the best way to think of it. It's like having two JPEGs within that single file. So if it's from a Fuji, I'll have that folder. And then I'll have another folder that's just called my aligned. If it's the left and right, so it'll be my aligned left and right pairs. Or if it's the Fuji, I have one I call just MPO aligned, just to differentiate them. But that's sort of a housekeeping feature. And the next thing is, well, how do you get Stereo Photomaker? If you don't already have it, I will show you where it is. If you just go to whatever browser you use, I'm in Google Chrome, and you just type in Stereo Photomaker. I've already done it before. So you type in Stereo Photomaker, and it'll take you to this website. And hopefully you're all seeing that. And if you can see my cursor. So on this site, if it's got 3 other languages, if you don't speak English, French, German, and Japanese are available. And if you go down under this big red headline, the maker of this, Masuji Sudo, from the beginning, he has been doing updates really frequently. There might be a history of them, but anyway, the latest version is here. It's the Stereo Photomaker Pro 64-bit version, and you can click on that to download it. There are some older versions and a 34-bit version. And just a little bit below that, I'll point out right now, there's a beginner's guide that I have written, and that's basically for twin camera work. There's also one that says beginner's guide, beginner's SPM guide illustrated for the Fuji W1 version 3. And that also would apply to the W3 model. I've also got, this is more advanced, some clone tool instructions. David Kuntz has some instructions on making stereo cards. And there's also the last one, it says an illustrated beginner's guide to Stereo Photomaker, done by a woman named Stereodoro. And that one is totally visual, and I'll talk more about it later. But without further ado, I will close that for the moment. And once you've downloaded Stereo Photomaker, and if you drag it onto your desktop, the latest version, the Pro version, this is what the icon looks like, where my cursor is. It says 3D Pro with a pair of glasses. The older version, right next to it, that's what the old logo looked like. But I'm going to use the latest version that I downloaded. So here it is. If you double click on it, it's a little intimidating because the first time you see it, you've just got this almost blank screen. And but other icons will show up once you start opening some pictures. So because this is for beginners, I'm going to first start by just showing how you would begin if you were using one of the digital 3D cameras like the Fuji W1 or the Fuji W3 or the Lumix 3D1. You would go to where it says File, and again, I'm just going to do a single image. So that MPO that I told you, it has an MPO extension, is actually a stereo image. So I'm going to go to Open Stereo Image. And the thing about Stereo Photomaker, it always goes to the last folder that you looked at. In this case, I happen to be looking at my MPO examples, but if not, here's all the folders I had in my SPM class folder if I go up, or here's everything in my pictures folder, but I will go back to my class. And right now I have some examples. And just to keep it simple, I just downloaded 5 pictures from a Fuji camera. And depending on what your setup is. The icons might be a little different. If you have it listed as a list, it might look like that, or it might just say under details or in icons. In this case, my browser doesn't support showing the MPO as a preview, so you just see that. So I'll just go to the list, and I'm going to open one picture from that list. And if you click on any of these, Stereo Photomaker does recognize it, so it will give you a preview, a 2D picture of what that picture is. So I'll pick a picture of, let's see what I've got here. I think I'll take this one here. So this is a picture I took at a screening of Coraline, and in the lobby they had one of the puppets, or whatever you call it, that was used in the movie. And so when you bring in the MPO, there's your left and right image, and the default is side-by-side pair. But also you notice once I opened up the stereo image, there are a lot more icons now across the top. And like a lot of programs, you can use the icons, and if you hold a cursor over it, a little word bubble will pop up to tell you what it is. For example, this one would change it to a color anaglyph, and this one would change it to a gray anaglyph, where this is going back to a side-by-side. There are other options like above, below, but I normally work side-by-side. And if you're a cross-eyed viewer, over here, there's an icon that says swap left and right, and that swaps you left and right. Or there's a shortcut. You don't have to memorize all this, but by hitting the letter X, that will switch it from parallel to cross-eyed. And also, like a lot of programs, if you go to the words across the top, for example, in View, let's see, under Stereo, you have a choice of a lot of these things as well, and then other choices too. So a lot of you, taking it with a stereo camera like this, you might look at it and say, well, that looks perfectly great. And it does look pretty good. If you look at it in an anaglyph mode, you can see it does look very good. And so in a way, this might not be the best example because it's aligned pretty well in the camera. But there is a feature. Well, let's pick a different picture just because maybe we'll get one that's not so well aligned. Well, let's just take a people picture. And if I look at the Anaglyph version, oh, and by the way, in Anaglyph, you've got some choices. There's a pop down. You can have a full color Anaglyph. With the red and blue there, that would ghost a lot. So there's a half color, which might look better. And there are other choices as well that you can experiment with to see which looks best. But going back to side-by-side, there's a manual adjustment mode, which is called Easy Adjustment. And here's the icon for it. And if you click here, you can go to a full screen. And you'll notice above and to the side of the picture, there are two sliders. This is a horizontal slider, so you can make some adjustments there. And this is a vertical slider. So manually, one could adjust this quite well if you wanted. Just for the heck of it, I'm going to misalign it on purpose and save it. And now, if you were to, and if you're looking with a viewer, or if you could free view that, you see it's going to be difficult to view. And in Anaglyph, it's really obvious. So I did this on purpose to show you that another option right over here, which is pretty cool. It's called auto alignment. And by clicking on that, if you watch the screen, you see this has popped up, little thermometers going at the bottom. It did that pretty fast. If you can see on the screen, what this just did, it corrected rotation between the two images, minus 3.3 degrees on the left, plus 0.2 on the right. It corrected a tiny 0.1% of size difference, a little bit of vertical and horizontal position. It shifted the position vertically 2 pixels and horizontally 61. And now I'll close that. And let's just see in Anaglyph how that looks, auto align. And you can see how beautifully it aligned that picture automatically. And for a great many pictures, auto alignment is good enough. Getting more advanced, if the picture is more complicated, there might be things at the right and left edges that are disturbing, and you can make manual adjustments for that. But just for now, I'll keep it simple just to show that you've got the choices of a manual and auto alignment. And the same things apply if you're using a single camera taking 2 separate pictures or twin camera. The only difference, and I'll show you here, is instead of opening stereo image, you're going to go here where it says open left-right images. I'm not going to save that picture, so it's going to give me a choice. So now it goes to where I left off, and that's not where I want to import the pictures from. So I'm going to go up 1 level. By the way, I'm working in Windows, Windows 10, and for those of you that use Macs, there is not a Mac version of Stereo Photomaker, but he's got a link on the website about using Macs using an emulator to emulate Windows. And that's not a subject I can get into. I'm not a Mac user myself, and it's a little more advanced, but it is possible for Mac users to use Stereo Photomaker, but this all is in the PC. Anyway, I'm going to go up 1 level, and this is in my pictures folder, and in my SPM class folder for today, I had some left and right images. So you notice up in the top, it still says open left image. So I'm going to go into this left image folder, and I happen to have saved 4 images. And I'm just going to pick one. And just for fun, I'll pick one of me. No, I'll pick this one. This was taken at one of the NSA conventions. And then I'm still in the left folder here, but notice at the top now it says open right image. So I'm going to have to go up 1 folder or 1 level. And now I go to my right folder, and I will pick that matching image in the right. And now I've opened up a separate right and left. And if you have a side-by-side viewer, you can view that. I'll wait a second here. For those of you who cross-eye view, I'll just leave it cross-eyed for a moment. And now I'll go back to parallel. And for those of you that don't do either, I'll switch to Anaglyph for a moment. And notice in the Anaglyph how far apart the subject material is. And in Anaglyph, that ghosts a lot more. So let's go back to side-by-side. I always like to do my auto adjustments starting in the side-by-side mode. I'm not sure that it really makes a difference, but that's just my habit. And I'm going to click on auto align. And we'll give it a minute. Notice in the lower left, the little thermometer is going, showing you it started working. And now it's popped up to tell you what it's done, and it's finished. So now I'll close that, and let's just go into Anaglyph and see how differently aligned it is. So it's aligned much, much better. Plus, that was with two separate cameras. So if there was any slight height difference or rotational difference, it's corrected those things. The only thing one might want to adjust manually, especially for an anaglyph, let me put on my anaglyph glasses, is to do some horizontal adjusting to reduce ghosting. And I find my own preference, even though technically it might be bringing the edges through the stereo window, I like to reduce ghosting on the main subjects. So I'm going to go into easy adjustment. I'll go to full screen. And I'm not going to touch verticals because the auto alignment does that perfectly. I'm just going to tweak the horizontal a little bit. And you can either do big movements by grabbing the slider in the middle, or you can do small movements by clicking on the arrows at either end. So I'm just going to click a bunch, and I'm going to align right here in the middle on Susan's fingers right there. And if you want to get really precision, you can click on this 100% size thing. And when you do that, then you can click and drag to part of the image. And let's say I wanted to line up this hand as the object that appears right at the window. So I can just move it over just a little bit more. And now you see no double image at all right there on that part of the hand. And that's 100% size. And if another trick for some images that can be handy, you can throw a grid onto your picture. And you can even change the pitch of the grid. But I won't need that for the moment. And I'll go click on 100%. Oh, let's say you've got a picture that's got very dark with things against a dark background. It's very hard to see where things are. You can click on edge detection, and you can line up on outlined edges that might have been hard to differentiate in a picture that had a dark subject on a dark background. Anyway, there's a lot of little tricks there. If the picture wasn't level, you can do a rotation here. And if you do that, right here in the corner, there's a button that says link both rotations together, because you don't want to separately rotate them. And now if I do this, you could rotate the whole image, or you can do it just a little bit. And if you have a grid, like you were leveling something, you could use that as a reference. But I'll just try to put it back where it was. So let's go back to 0. Okay. And I'll get rid of that. And say OK. So now my Anaglyph version, I think, is a lot easier to view. And there's the side-by-side version. Okay, actually, maybe, well, no, I'm going to continue with one more step before I get into asking about some, oh, there is one other thing, sorry. When you're doing a single camera shifted to the left or right, or with two cameras, sometimes you can get color temperature or slight exposure differences between the left and the right. And that isn't really much of a problem here, but if you go up here in the adjust mode, and for here I use the pop down, under adjust, and this pops down, there's this auto color adjustment. And in this, you have a choice of picking the left or the right image to be your reference. So I know sometimes with my twin camera rig, the right picture is a little bit warmer than the left, or vice versa. Whichever one I like the look of better, or one's a little lighter, one's a little darker. If I pick that as the reference, it'll then match the other one to it. And like I said, in this case, there isn't much difference, so you won't see it. but even a small difference can make a big difference later if I wanted to go into save it and then do other color manipulations like in Photoshop. The closer these two colors are matched, the better it's going to work when you're doing a side-by-side pair in Photoshop. Because if there's even a slight difference, that'll be exaggerated when you start, like, let's say, increasing color intensity or doing some manipulation to the pair as a pair in Photoshop. Another thing you can do in Stereo Photomaker, which is very nice, is cropping in stereo. And I like to crop in the Anaglyph mode. You can do it in side by side, but if I go into Anaglyph, let's say I just wanted this part of the picture, I could go here, click on crop, and I have it set on free cropping. You can set it to a fixed thing, like if you wanted it square, or set the ratio, but I usually go for free cropping. And let's say I just wanted this part of the picture, and I wanted it square. Just eyeballing it. And then once you've cropped, you can click on it. And then you can, up here, click on fit. And now I've got a crop version, and there's a side-by-side crop version in a more square format. And if you did that and you weren't happy with it, there's an undo button over here. And you could undo it and do it over again. So I didn't like that cropping. So I'll start over. Oops. Well, here's what it looks like if you're doing it as a stereo pair. I'll crop a little bigger this time. And then I'll just go to fit screen. And then, so once you've done all this, whether it's cropped or not, or you've adjusted it, you can click, you can hit the letter S, or down here, if you like to use menus, you can do on File and Save Stereo Image. And the important thing is when you go to save it, first, it's going to save it in the last folder that you saved whatever the last thing was in. So in this case, I'm going to save it in an aligned right-left pair folder. So there's that folder. I'm going to open that. And then I can click on save. And notice the preview here. It saves it in whatever format you were viewing on the screen. So I'm going to click on save. And now it's just saved that. Well, let's say I go into Anaglyph mode. Now if I go and click on File, Save Stereo Image, notice the preview is showing an Anaglyph. And it's going to save it as an Anaglyph. So if I wanted to save that, I've got an Anaglyph folder created. So I'm going to go up a level. Here's my color Anaglyph folder. I will save it there. And that's that. So that's great for doing one image. But let's say you've just spent a whole day shooting. I went out to the beach yesterday. I shot 100 pictures. Well, a nice feature of Stereo Photomaker is you can deal with them as a batch. And I'm going to start from scratch. So I'll close Stereo Photomaker. I'm going to open it up again. And I'm going to, in this case, instead of doing File and opening either a stereo image or a left-right image, I'm going to go down to where it says multi-conversion. And in this case, I'm working with, I'm going to work with the MPOs, like from a Fuji camera. So I'm going to go to the folder where I have, like I said, I have 5 pictures taken with a Fuji camera. This could just as easily be 100, but I limited it to 5 so I could show you this in real time. So this is where I want to get the pictures from. And so that says I'm going to look in, and this is where the pictures are. And then it's down here, it says, what is the input file type? And again, as I mentioned earlier, for all practical purposes, an MPO is a side-by-side stereo pair embedded in this one file extension MPO. It's like two JPEGs in there. So that it considers an MPO a side-by-side image. But if you were doing independent lefts and rights, you would click on this, and I'll go back to that in a minute. But for the beginning, I'll just do that. So it's a side-by-side image. And then you can tell it, so that's the input. And then here it says output file type. And again, you have many choices, but the default is you want to output it as a side-by-side parallel stereo pair. And that's my personal default format, because once I save that, I can then take that saved pair, which has been aligned and adjusted. And if I want to do anything else with it later, I can bring it back into Stereo Photomaker. But that way they are saved in a single file, and you don't have to keep track of separate lefts and rights. And also, if I want to work on it in Photoshop, you want to work on them together as a pair, not separately. So I save it as a side-by-side JPEG, but just to show you, there's this menu. You can save it as an independent left-right. You can have one be a mirror image, above, below, anaglyphs, a lot of choices here. Row interlaced, universal freeview format, it saves it left, right, left. Anyway, there are a lot of options, but my default one and the default that it is side-by-side. And I want to batch auto align all of them. Again, because even though the stereo camera does a very good job, if there's even the slightest height difference, size difference, and the horizontal separation, this will optimize it better than the way it was in the camera. And with the auto alignment, I like to have it auto crop. Some people like to do that manually later, but I've been doing it this way for years. And as a beginner, I think you can't go wrong using auto crop. And let's see. And once so I've got those set. And then down here, you have choices to convert selected files if you wanted to highlight just some, or in this case, I'm going to convert all the files. Oops, wait, I forgot one step. You also down here have to tell it, where do you want to save the pictures that you just are aligning? So, sorry, so down here, if you click on the Browse button, you get kind of like a Windows Explorer type of thing. In this case, I'm going to align all those MPOs in an MPO aligned folder. So there were 5 images there. I've told it, so now basically the input type, the output folder, then I'm going to convert all files. This pops up and it asks you before you start, it says SPM will convert the 5 selected JPEG files and save to the folder, and it shows the path of the pictures, SPM class, MPO aligned. Do you want to start? And I'll say yes. And it'll show you what it's doing, and you'll see why I've only picked 5 pictures. The faster your computer is, the faster it will do this. But it is, if you saw earlier when I did a manual or did an auto align of one picture, it's now going through all of those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and aligning them. And it's putting them in that aligned folder. And it's almost done. And there it is. So just to prove it. I could open them in Stereo Photomaker, but I'm going to minimize that. I'm going to go to my folders. I'm going to go to the class, and here's the folder I just aligned them to. And that folder was empty before, and now it's got 5 aligned stereo pairs. And these are parallel. So I'll just, for right now, I'm just going to share them in the Windows Picture Viewer. And those of you that have a side-by-side parallel viewer, in a minute, I'll show you how you can view them differently. And I've just aligned them, and it does a very good job. And one could, and also once I've done that, I go back to Stereo Photomaker. Let's say I wanted to have all of those as anaglyphs. I could go back and do a multi-conversion, but in this case, I've already aligned those. So I'm going to go into the aligned files. Here they are. And they're a side-by-side input, except this time I'm going to output them as a, let's say, I'm going to do a half-color anaglyph. And I'm going to put them in a different folder. I don't need to align them because they've already been aligned and cropped. So I'm going to uncheck those. And now I'm going to browse to, I've got a half-color anaglyph folder. So if I do now convert all of those files, and again, it asks you, it'll convert the 5 selected files and save to that folder. You say yes. Now it's going to be even faster because it's not aligning them. It's only converting the already aligned images to Anaglyph. See how fast that was? Done. And now if I go to the Anaglyph folder, here's my half-color Anaglyph folder, which was empty. And now there they are. Again, I would manually bring the main subject closer together, but this is what it did automatically. So that is some of the most basic features that I wanted to show. You also, well, I think maybe this would be a good time to stop and ask if there are some questions. I know I've just thrown a lot at you. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment, and let's see everybody. And if the host will allow everybody to unmute if they want, are there any questions about any one aspect of what I just showed?
David, I have a question about the cropping.
Yes.
Because you do that very quickly and that never seems to work for me. But are you actually pick the cropping tool, then you enter the photo and start where you want to start cropping and click there, and then you click again where you want to, the lower corner?
It does not work the way cropping works like in Photoshop.
Okay, so that's my problem.
Yeah, and so let me do a quick example because I think everybody else might appreciate it too. Hold on, I'll go to screen share. Let's see here. Okay, let's open up Stereo Photomaker. Let me open a stereo image. Oh, this will be a good one because I can show 2 things at once. This was the one that I didn't like the way it looked in Anaglyph, even though it auto-adjusted it. For Anaglyph, what I would do, and I'm going to go full screen for a second, I would bring the main subject closer together like this so that it's it's better to view in Anaglyph. Anyway, once I've done that, now I'll show the cropping, and I'm going to do cropping in Anaglyph just because I think it's easier to see exactly what you're getting. So if you go to the crop tool, and again, I'm using the free cropping option, which is the first one, but you can pick here's some other aspect ratios that you can choose. Let's say I wanted to do a Holmes or there's a little terminology thing here. I think, let me pick a Holmes card and see what it does. And now it's going to limit my aspect ratio. But anyway, then when you come over here, you always start in the upper left corner. And if you're not within the crop area, you'll notice once I move down a little square box pops up. Can you see that? At any rate, then I have to click, left click the mouse, and you can start dragging it. And this is keeping this particular ratio. So I can't move it over because I'm in this particular mode because of where I started. So you can let go, and unlike some other programs, this may be what's throwing you off. Photoshop and a lot of other programs at this point would let you grab any one of the four sides to make a further adjustment. Stereo Photomaker doesn't let you do that. Your only option is to click in the middle of it, and that crops it. But let's say, no, I didn't want that. So what you can do at that point is click on the, up here is the undo button. See that? And I undo it. So let me start over. Let's say I really wanted to start my cropping here. And I want just that. And there it is. And then you can go back either to the side-by-side pair. So I think maybe that's probably what threw you off. I'll undo it. You're back to full screen. Is that little trick that when you crop, and let me go back again. I like to use free cropping most of the time. So I'm going to turn off the keep aspect ratio. So now I can crop any way I want. So let's say I wanted to do that, just a weird crop. That's free cropping. Again, once you've done it, you click in the middle. And if you don't like it, undo it. So does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. I think what I was trying to do is crop in side by side, looking at both images and trying to crop both of them, which clearly is
actually,
wrong.
let me just for a quick example, you can crop in side by side, but you're only going to do one side. Watch what happens. When I go, let's say to here, free cropping, and you have to always do it on the left. So notice whatever I'm doing on the left is happening at the same time on the right. You see? So there you are. Notice there's two boxes, one on the left, one on the right. You cannot independently work with them. They are locked together. And there you are. And again, if you don't like it, I can go fit to screen here. If you don't like it, you can undo it. So you can do it, but I find it just intuitively, it just seems easier to crop it in the Anaglyph mode. And even if I want to end up side by side and then change it back to side by side. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you very much. I'm going to go try it. But
David, I have a cropping question.
Sure.
When you crop, do you realign after you crop?
That all depends on the image. Yeah. A lot of times, once you crop it, you do have to look at how it looks in 3D, and it might require realigning. Because the window may have changed at the edges or whatever. And well, let me just go back to share screen.
Yeah, I have noticed that.
Yeah, Yeah, that often can be, it may not be true. Let me pick one of the other pictures. Well, I'll use this picture. But let's say I crop this here, and I want to do a very tight cropping. Just for her. And I crop it, and I go full screen, fit to screen, or I go side by side. Well, let's say, let's say I'm looking at the Anaglyph version, and I'd like her to be a little more aligned. Like, let's say this jacket here. So I'd like that to be right at the window. Well, I could go to 100% size, drag it to the part of this image that I want to be aligned. Actually, her hand is probably in front of the jacket. So let's see if I align on her hand. And that's interesting. It's off vertically a bit. So let's play with that. Notice how fine this can be, especially in the 100% mode. And now let's say OK. And just for fun, those of us who have Anaglyph glasses, oh wait, that's kind of, see how that looks in Anaglyph. It's a little ghosty on the jacket, but I would pick, you can try some of the different Anaglyph versions to see if you like one of them better. And you could also go with a gray Anaglyph. And even in gray, there's also a red-green setting for red-green glasses. So there are a lot of options. But yeah, so depending a lot on the subjects, when you crop, you do want to recheck your stereo windowing. And just the whole explanation of the stereo window is a little more advanced subject. Because I think for most beginners, if you do nothing but easy adjust, you're going to be in pretty good shape.
That's our next workshop.
David,
Is
David,
going to be Carl Wilson doing
Yeah.
the stereo
David.
window.
Yes.
something else to point out while we're on the topic of cropping. Andrew Hurst just noted in the chat that before you do the click to do the final crop, if you hold your mouse key, you can drag the crop box around.
Oh, okay. I forgot that you can do that. I know you can't drag just the edges, but
you can shift the whole box around.
All right, let's try it, because you know what? In all these years, I've not done it that way. So, like I said, even doing a workshop and even a beginner's workshop, I always learn something from people that know more than me. So let's see if I can undo here. Yeah, hold on. So let's say I do this crop here. Let's say I cropped here, but I'd rather move it over. Yeah, that's why it's showing you this up, down, right, left arrow. So you can move the whole box. But what you can't do, as soon as I let go, it crops. What you can't do is grab just one edge and move it. But you can always undo and start over. One other thing, which I'll mention just for those that have 3D TVs, and I do this in the batch alignment, is once I've done all the alignment, again, my default is side-by-side mode for saving. But once I've done that, if I want to view them on a 3D TV, I will go to multi-conversion, and here's my aligned folder that I was just working in. And in this case, if I recall, yeah, if I want to output it for a TV, this I always found a little confusing because he's got all these formats you can output, but he does not show an MPO here. And the reason is it's here. besides a JPEG, you do have other choices: a bitmap, JPS, a PNG, a TIFF, a GIF, and MPO. So if I did what I did before, and I don't think I created a folder for it, but if I save them all back again as MPOs, the reason is I have an LG TV, and if I put the MPO files on a thumb drive and put that into the USB input on my TV, I could, without using a computer, those will open up, and I can play them as a slideshow. And the TV, a 3D TV, and I hope other brands as well, automatically recognize that as a 3D format. Even better, if I do it as a side-by-side, it's got to be 50% squeezed, and I may have to manually tell it to adjust for that. But the MPO, it just automatically does it. And you say, well, why bother? It's already an MPO in the camera. Yeah, but it aligns it better, and on the TV, it just is that much more comfortable to view if you auto-align it first. So again, I'll stop sharing and back to questions if there's some more. And let me see if I've got, I think that's most of the basics. The other nice thing, you do have a lot of output formats later, if you want Anaglyph, etc. There is a way to make stereo cards, like if you want to have prints made. There's a little tutorial on that. I don't know how we're doing time-wise. I could show a quick example, if you like, of making a stereo card.
Yeah, I think that'll work.
Okay, hold
Let
on.
me just, maybe we'll make a couple announcements now, and then we can do that as the finale.
Okay, and then I also have some announcements. But that's the basic workshop. But please, before we go on to anything else, I just want to be sure if there are any more questions about, the two basics are individual slide alignment and doing things in the multi-conversion version, which is to do things as a batch. And
David,
yes,
could you post those links in the chat for all of the information on Masuji's website?
I thought I did at the beginning. Which links are? Take a look at the chat right at the very top. Hold on,
For people that came in late,
for people who came in late, it might be good to put them in there again.
Oh, all right. All right, let me.
I don't see them in mine.
Oh, you know what? I forgot to hit enter. Here they are now.
There we go. Okay.
Sorry, my fault. So there's the Stereo Photomaker website. How to make images using a single digital camera, getting started with a digital camera. There are others. Oh, let me show you one more thing I'd like to share. Just a sec. Hold on. If we go back to the Stereo Photomaker website, down here under where my beginner's guide is. Well, first I'll show you my beginner's guide for what I just showed you. This is a text version for separate lefts and rights. Whoops. Let's go back. No, all right, hold on. I've got this other version is what I just basically shown for W3, but the last one, it says an illustrated beginner's guide to Stereo Photomaker by Stereodoro. And this is like a PowerPoint presentation. And this shows everything visually. Although she is showing you for doing separate lefts, rights. But other than that, if you everything else is the same for an MPO. So if you like it all visual, this is a really great all visual tutorial, step by step. So feel free, go back later. That's all on the Stereo Photomaker website. This one
And
here.
there's a bunch of people watching in Altspace. I popped in there for a little bit to see what it was like.
Yes,
We should see if anybody from Altspace has any questions while we're here.
happy to answer them if they, can they talk? That we
Yeah,
hear them? Or-
Jay, they're passing their questions through Jay. Jay, do you have any Altspace questions? I guess not. Anyways, what I wanted to mention just before we go on with the thing is we do have an advanced one, which will actually be in May. I'll get you the date if you keep an eye on our website. Or next month, we're going to have one in April. I believe it's on the 24th at 10 a.m. and it will be on the stereo window. Carl Wilson will be doing that. We have our meetings every third Thursday, which looks like next month will be the 15th. So we are having it the 15th, then we're having the 17th, I'm sorry. So April 17th will be the workshop on the stereo window. Carl Wilson. Then we're having an advanced workshop will be in May with me and David Koontz, probably the 22nd. So we'll have more information on those as they appear. Also, I do want to mention a new thing that did come out today is this, which is a 3D movie maker by the same guy who made Stereo Photomaker. And this does 3D movies on your iPhone. Only works on the iPhone. But I've been working with it today. Had a lot of fun, and the cool thing about it is you can live stream it on your Chromecast. So.
And just to add to what Steve said, those future workshops, you can find out about them at the LA 3D Club website. And I just put it in chat. Pardon the typo. The one that says la3d.club.com, that's incorrect. It's just www.la3dclub.com. And that's basically sort of who's hosting us today, I guess. And our club will be having these workshops in the future. Yeah, Eric put a better link in than I did.
Okay, we'll be going back to David. I did want to mention our meetings are every third Thursday. Also, we're having the 3D Con. We're one of the clubs sponsoring it. Hope you enjoyed the video. We'll probably show that again at a meeting. Again, third Thursday at 7 Pacific time. All you have to do is type la3d.club in your browser. You'll be directed to a Zoom link. Everybody's invited. You don't have to be a club member. Now, back to David.
Okay. Before I continue, I'll do a little quickie on making a stereo card. I have to put in a blatant plug for my wife's website. So I'll just share this for a moment. The shortcut to it, ignore what's at the top of the screen, is you can just go to www.3-dlegends.com. And this is a website that's basically a tribute to all these people who are no longer with us. And for those that are big fans of Lenticular, her latest edition is Maurice Bonnet, who created some of the greatest lenticular quality images ever back in the in the 1940s. This is one of the cameras he used. And any picture on that site, you can click to enlarge and click again. And there are many 3D pictures on the website. And she does them all in a, let me pick a interesting one, let's say. Well, anyway, here's one of the cameras. And if you click on it, they're all done in a left, right, left format for free viewing. at any rate. So that's 3D Legends. And now going back to Stereo Photomaker, I'll hold on, close that. Let's say you've got a stereo image that you would like to make a stereo card out of. And people are always a nice subject. So this is Greg Dinkins' daughter many years ago. So at least when I make a sort of a classic stereo card, you can do it in whatever
David,
ratio.
we're still seeing your browser.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're still seeing the browser?
Yeah. You'll
Why
need
is
to go
that?
back out and share the desktop.
Sorry. Let me start over. Is that working now? Yeah.
There, yeah,
Sorry.
we see it now.
Sorry. Apologize about that. Just for aesthetics, I like to usually make them square if I'm going to make a print card. And here's where you can go on the free cropping. If you go to the classic stereo card, and this is where I disagree with Masuji's terminology. If I recall, the Holmes card, which is what I would think of as a classic stereo card, is really, I think, for a 4x6 print. And the classic 5x7, if I recall, is this one. We'll find out in a moment. So, oh, and again, let's do it in Anaglyph. So let me make sure I'm in the right one. Yeah, classic stereo card. Okay, crop. And let's say, there we are. Well, looks a little taller than wide, or maybe not. And I like that tip that you can now move this around till you've got it where you want it. So now I've got my more or less square image. If you go to here where it says File, and right at the very end of the pop down, it says Print Stereo Card. If you click on that, notice what you get. The reason it says print is this is set up for printing on a, like if you had a color printer at home, it's going to print it in the upper corner of your 8.5 by 11 paper. And if you notice here, it says classic stereo card, 7 by 3.5 inches. And there's your overall paper side. And here you can now give it a title. So here you can change the title. And I could put in, Jane Doe, maybe the location, copyright my name. I'll put in David Starkman, 2021. You can choose to have an arch or not. If you look at the picture in the upper corner, that's without the arch, that's with the arch. Sometimes you're going to lose something that you don't want to lose with the arch. In this case, for a portrait like this, I like the arch. You can change the color of the background. I tend to go with sort of, I call it Keystone Gray, like the old Keystone cards. And I usually stick to the black text, although you can change the color of the text as well, which is here. Change text color. And there's other options, but I think instead of printing, so if you were going to print it straight to your color printer, I think you could do it right now, but I like to send it out and have it printed, like at Costco. So if you do save as, now, again, it shows you that it's going to save it as a print. Here's the preview, and I'll go to another folder, and in this class, I had a folder I had called abbreviated RD2 print, ready to print. So I'm going to put it in that folder, and I'm just going to call it Lily, because that's who the subject is, SV, stereo view, and save it. And if I go, now if I close that, and if I go to that folder, my ready to print folder, oops, I must have made a mistake somewhere. Oh, somehow she didn't get into the folder. Anyway, let's move it. All right, so there's the card I just made. And I'll just say there is one more trick. If you're going to have it printed at a place, you know, at a drugstore or somewhere where you can do it online, it's a 5x7-inch card. But if you just send, if I just send it just like that to the lab, they tend to stretch it out and in a way you don't want. So, oh, wrong Adobe, sorry. Where's my photo? Oh, sorry, I'm not working. Okay, well, my main computer is out in the shop, and I forgot I don't have Adobe Elements in here. This is like a really ancient Adobe, which I'm not sure I can do it. Basically, you want to see if I can do it here. Under size, yes. You want to, yeah, so Photoshop has a similar menu. You want to change the canvas. What I find, if I want to end up with a 3.5x7-inch card, I have to put it on a 7-inch wide by 5-inch canvas. Maybe, hold on. Let me cancel that. I guess I have to size the picture first. So I'm going to do the photo size, 7 inches by 3.5. And just for the moment, I'll just leave it at the resolution it is. And now, once I've sized the picture, I'm going to put the canvas also at 7 inches, but with a 5-inch height. I don't know. Well, I'm not used to doing it in this program. The point is, by putting a 3.5x7-inch picture on a 5x7-inch background for printing on 5x7-inch paper, it'll get printed the right size by the lab. If you just give them a 3.5x7-inch photo, they're going to stretch it out to the height and crop the sides. Did that make sense? I'm sorry I wasn't able to demo that properly, but it wasn't originally what I intended to show in this class. But I hope you understood at least the principle of what I was saying. Any questions? It's a very quiet group. Can they unmute?
All good. Thank you, David. That was awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, if people have ideas, we're going to have the advanced workshop next not next month, but the month after. If you have things you want covered, if you could put them in the chat now, we can make sure that we cover those. I was planning to go over grayscale, clone tool, a few other things, working with I'm working with, by then, I think the volumetric display should be out. So we'll have ways of doing that. Processing, there's also movie processing that you can now do using Stereo Photomaker. So just go over that and I'll save the chat. This video will be up later at our club site. So, any questions? Yeah, depth maps is one of the things we're going to be going over. Another feature I found very recently, it's been supported for quite a long time, that I only used it recently, is a way that you can pick photos out of, say you have a bunch of photos in one file that are lefts and rights all mixed up. There's a way to pick them out, a picker that they have that works very well for that. So we'll cover that as well.
Yeah, we owe
Looking
Mr.
glass, that was
Bisuto a great thanks for all of the work that he's put into Stereo Photomaker.
And I wanted to thank David Starkman, who's
Oh,
a
thanks.
great resource for our club. Thank you, David.
Well, thanks. Again, I've been shooting digital since 2005 and been using Stereo Photomaker since not long after that. And in the early days, the auto alignment feature was not it. You had to manually align every single picture. But I will say that even after all these years, what I just showed you is 99% of what I ever use. The only other main thing, which Steve mentioned, but it's not part of a basic workshop, is that clone tool is very handy. But I do have a one-page tutorial that explains it that's on the Stereo Photomaker webpage. You can print that out. And if anybody ever wants to write to me directly, in a second, I'll put my email address in the, actually, I think, no, sorry, I already have it in the chat. So feel free if anybody wants to email me with a question or whatever, I'll be happy to help.
David, did you mention the auto color adjustment?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, he did.
You did. Okay. I wasn't sure. Andrew Hurst had just mentioned levels and color adjustment in the chat.
Well, you can manually do it, but the auto adjustment was the main feature, which I use all the time. And by the way, if any of you are, I like to take old stereo cards and digitize them, realign them for viewing, like on my 3D TV or in a digital viewer. And it's very, very common on those old stereo cards for there to be slight exposure differences between the lefts and the rights. And just that one click, it's amazing how many times, I'll pick either the left or the right as the reference. And it's amazing how much better it can make it. Not all the time. If it's too extreme, it won't do it. But if it's within a range, it works amazingly well, even on black and white old stereo cards to balance the exposure. So yeah, it's a neat feature.
Okay, well, thanks everybody. I hope everybody had a happy 3D day. And this went a little longer than we thought. We thought an hour. It's about an hour and 20 minutes, but we did have a lot of
well, you had,
yeah, I know, David.
You got stuff besides the workshop. And like I said, when I do this at NSA, it's always literally almost right the full hour. So yeah, if I've talked to Rick Chomsky about for the NSA virtual one, I'm going to do a really extra basic if they want me to keep it to 30 minutes.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons we are kind of putting workshops a lot of them separate from the regular meetings, is just so we can go long.
Okay.
Sure.
Well,
Thank
hey,
you.
why doesn't
Awesome,
everyone
guys.
unmute yourselves and let's give David a big round of applause.
Thank you, David, Steve, and Eric. It was great. All of
Okay.
you.
Well, thank you all. It's been nice seeing you all virtually. And to all the people that are in there with their virtual headsets on. Sorry I can't hear you, but hope you enjoyed it. And
Thanks,
so our
David.
friend Andrew in England, glad you're up in the middle of the night, I guess. So glad to see
I'm the
you.
only one. Tim's here as well.
Sorry.
Tim Goldsmith is on as
Yeah, I
well.
saw Tim too. Sorry, I should have said hi to Tim too. Sorry, Tim. You're good to see you both from England.
Okay, guys,
All right.
See ya.
Bye bye.
ending the meeting.
All right. Bye bye.